all have very important modalities. That's number one. Number two for osteoarthritis, we really give importance on the location. Which joints are affected, which side is affected. Location is very important again for osteoarthritis. Number three, we give importance on the character of the pain. The character of the pain. Is it stiffness is important, or soreness is important, or burning is important. If we try to cover these three aspects in osteoarthritis, we find that we actually come to a medicine. The modality, the location, and the character of it. I believe and also I have seen that these are the most important when we are prescribing on the basis of these symptoms in osteoarthritis. I'll first start with the acute medicines or the lesser known medicines. If you look at your handout, it's in page 29. Here my handout. Page 29. Acute medicines. See that the first medicine in our list is Actia spicata. We've got that. First medicine is Actia spicata. You don't need to know so many things about Actia. I'll just mention two things for Actia spicata. Number one, if you have a patient with wrist joint rheumatism, and which is aggravated from the least touch or the least motion, that's Actia. Wrist joint rheumatism, which is aggravated by the least touch or the least motion, you got Actia. Very few medicines, I'll say no medicine has so much action on the wrist joint as Actia spicata. It's a wonderful medicine specific for wrist joint rheumatism, which is aggravated by the least touch or the least motion. Even opening the jar or touching it here, anything which causes fatigue, that causes aggravation for Actia. We could have thought about Banerjea because it also covers aggravation motion. But what differentiates Banerjea from Actia spicata? The location differentiates Banerjea from Actia spicata. If you have that wrist joint which is aggravated by the least motion, it's definitely Actia spicata. That's number one. Number two on our list is benzoic acid. Again, two things very important for benzoic acid. Number one is cracking of the joints. Cracking of the joints, which is aggravated by the least motion. Cracking of the joints which is aggravated by the least motion. Cracking of the joints which is aggravated by the least motion. Number one. Number two, benzoic acid is a celebrated medicine for high uric acid. High uric acid is a very important part of benzoic acid. With, please remember, offensive urine is the character of benzoic acid. High uric acid, very offensive urine, please remember benzoic acid. And also, for benzoic acid is a wonderful medicine for ganglion. Ganglion in the near the wrist. Ganglion. Number one I mentioned is cracking of the joints. The cracking sound will be heard on the least motion. Number two for benzoic acid is high uric acid associated with offensive urine, very bad smell in the urine, offensive urine. And number three I mentioned is ganglion. You take down 3-4 medicines for uric acid in your clinical case. High uric acid. Number one is obviously benzoic acid. Number two, Artica urens. Artica urens. URTICA, Artica urens. In urticarians, you generally have an allergic predisposition, allergic tendency. You know, urticarians is a medicine for shellfish allergy, crab allergy. So there is an allergic predisposition in urticarians, shellfish and crab allergy. Number 3 is Berberis vulgaris. In Berberis also there is an important modality, aggravation standing is very important for Berberis. Aggravation standing. It's written in Boric that standing brings on or increases most of the urinary complaints. So standing is very important for Berberis. Standing brings on or increases most of the urinary complaints for Berberis. Number 1 I mentioned benzoic acid. Number 2 is urticarians. And number 3 is Berberis vulgaris, where you will find standing increases most of the urinary complaints. And you know Berberis is a left-sided kidney medicine. Left-sided. Another interesting medicine I'd like to mention is Hedeoma. 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 For hyaluronic acid. Yeah. No, that's hydrangeum. Hedeoma. Hedeoma. That's also a medicine for hyaluronic acid. But the character in Hedeoma is pain in the thumb joint is very important for you. Pain in the thumb joint. That's very important for you. No, very few medicines will have this kind of character in Hedeoma, that there is pain in the thumb joint. Please remember, hyaluronic acid with pain in the thumb. Toe joint, that's one of the common symptoms for hyaluronic acid. You can try colchicum. Colchicum has also pain in the ball of the toe. Colchicum, but colchicum is more of 30C, 200C, but these are more lower potencies. Yeah.
So you said the uric acid deposits in the thumb. Is Hedeoma good for them as well, or what can you use?
Yeah, hyaluronic acid will deposition in the thumb joint.
Yeah.
That's Hedeoma. So I mentioned uric.
Use this at the
Yes, 60.
all of them in 60.
Tincture or 60. So I mentioned Artica, benzoic acid, Berberis and Hedeoma. So coming back to benzoic acid, I mentioned that number 1 is cracking, which is aggravated motion. Number 2, high uric acid with offensive urine. And number 3 for benzoic acid was gangrene. Third medicine on our list is Colophylum. Colophylum, please remember, it's a wonderful medicine for finger joint rheumatism. Wonderful medicine for finger joints rheumatism. That's number 1 for Colophylum, finger joint rheumatism. And number 2, most important for Colophylum is finger joint rheumatism, which migrates. The character of the pain is very important for Colophylum, migratory character of pains. Finger joint rheumatism with migratory character of pains. Associated with that there is stiffness. Finger joint rheumatism, migratory character of pains, associated with that there is stiffness. In Colophylum, this shifting pains, it can be in the joints, also in case of labor pains. How? Joint pains, I told, shifting character of the pains. In labor pains, there is, what happens then, if the pain is in the right direction, only labor can progress. In case of Colophylum, the pain is not progressing in the right direction. So there is shifting nature of the pain resulting in delayed labor for Colophylum. The shifting nature of the pains causes delay of the labor, and what Colophylum does, it helps in the progress of labor in the right direction. So shifting nature of pains manifested in osteoarthritis as well as manifested in case of labor pains, where Colophylum is a wonderful medicine for delayed labor, and this shifting character of the pain, Colophylum regularizes. So pains progress in the right direction, helping in the progressive. Next medicine we have is ginseng. We use ginseng very often. I'll say more than the medicines I mentioned earlier. Why? On two criteria for ginseng. Number one is stiffness, and number two is contraction. You get these two features for ginseng. Lots of stiffness around the joints, in the joints, and associated with that there is a contracted feeling in the joints. That's a wonderful indication for ginseng. Stiffness in and around the joints, associated with lots of contracted feeling around the joints. If you get that, ginseng is a wonderful medicine. Stiffness,
Any of the
yeah, any of the joints. Stiffness associated with lots of contraction. You know, this type of contraction, you also get in a polypress, like you can get in an osticum, contraction. We have that in Atmure also, contraction. I like to mention one small medicine is ammon-mu. We have lots of contraction in that medicine, ammon-mu, ammonium muriatic. And the appearance of ammon-mu is like this. Huge body, like the upper part is just huge and is supported on like two sticks. So body is large and fat and legs are very thin. So like a pumpkin is resting on two matchsticks. Ammonium looks like that. Just reverse of lycopodium. If you remember, lycopodium upper part is emaciated, lower part is more semi-glossy. In ammonium the body is large and fat, whereas legs are very thin. It's mentioned in Allen's, and you can have a look at that. The body is large and fat, whereas legs are very thin for ammonium. Reverse of lycopodium. So stiffness and contraction for ginseng. Number 5 on our list is Kali iron. Kali iron is again a wonderful medicine. 3 aspects for Kali iron I like to highlight. Swelling plus mainly knee joints. Kali iron has lots of swelling mainly in the knee joints. And please remember, Kali iron is lots of sensitiveness. That knee joint is very sensitive to touch. And associated with that, 2 very important modalities for Kali iron is aggravation night and aggravation damp. Aggravation night and aggravation damp. And in the center of the triangle you can put syphilitic events. Because syphilis miasm is preponderant, you will find this aggravation night is quite important for Kali iron. Associated with that, there is lots of sensitiveness and swelling. Mainly in the knee joints, you will find lots of swelling and effusion in the knee joints. So these 3 aspects for Kali iron are very important. And Kali iron is generally prescribed in higher potencies, 30C to 100C. Kali iron really works well. You will find lots of sensitiveness with swelling and night aggravation and damp weather aggravation. That's very important for Kali iron. This swelling in the knee joints, we also know that as housemaid's knee. It's also called housemaid's knee. Because generally the housemaids, if you see here, they walk on the ground and they are feeling, so they generally kneeling down on their knees, and it causes a friction and resulting in inflammation generally. So there's lots of swelling in the knee joints. It's also known as housemaid's knee for Kali iron. And 2 medicines I'd like to mention for housemaid's knee. Please remember, very small size medicine is slag, S-L-E-G, slag. Slag, S-L-A-G, slag, and sticta, S-T-I-C-T-A, sticta. Yeah, sticta. Slag and sticta. So in Kali iron, lots of swelling, sensitiveness with night aggravation and damp weather aggravation is very important for Kali iron. Please remember 30C to 100C works best for Kali iron. Other medicines much smaller, lower potencies. Another thing I'd like to mention, this type of swelling, if you get, well selected medicine is not working. Please think of sulfur. Why sulfur? It's mentioned in Allen's, a wonderful line. If you have Allen's, you can look at it. That to facilitate the absorption of serous fluids. Sulfur facilitates the absorption of serous fluids. When Banerjea, Calimute, or the best selected medicine fails. To facilitate the absorption of serous fluids, when Banerjea, Calimute, or the best selected medicine fails. If you look in Allen's, when Banerjea, Calimute, or the best selected medicine fails. About 4 or 5 lines above from the relationship. That is written in anywhere where there is fluid collection. Facilitate absorption of fluids in joints, in lungs. So if you have fluid effusion, or in the joints where there is large collection of fluid. Your best selected medicine, Banerjea, your Calimute, or Ajilaka is not working. Please remember that it will help in the absorption of that collected fluid. Sulfur. Yeah, you can prescribe also just on these modalities in hospital. So, in sulfur, that helps in the absorption of the fluids when your best selected medicine fails. That's very important for sulfur. And also cardiac, you have that kind of spelling thing. Last but not the least in this group is rhamnus. Rhamnus has all the characters you will find in an inflammation. All the characters you will find in an inflammation. Like the joint will be red, joint will be swollen, and it will be painful and tender to touch. Painful and tender to touch. All the characters of inflammation you find that in rhamnus: swollen, red, and painful to touch. It's generally prescribed in tincture or 6C. This inflammatory rheumatism is one word you must remember for rhamnus. Inflammatory rheumatism. Out of this, all 6 medicines, rhamnus and ginseng are most used. Because on the basis of common symptoms, rhamnus has that character of inflammatory rheumatism, and ginseng, that stiffness, that contraction is very important for ginseng. If you remember when I discussed asthma, idiotic churn, which has asthma better by expectoration. Although that is quite a common symptom in asthma, but we use that quite often based on the common symptoms of the disease. Here also in rhamnus, we are prescribing it on the basis of the common symptoms of the disease, where the joints are red, joints are swollen, and it is painful and tender to touch. It's very important for rhamnus. And if your rhamnus fails in inflammatory rheumatism, please remember another medicine is Banerjea. Banerjea. Banerjea also has the characters of inflammatory rheumatism. If your rhamnus fails in inflammatory rheumatism, you can think of Banerjea. Just like to do a recap. Actias picata I mentioned, wrist joint rheumatism was from the slightest fatigue or slightest motion. Number 1. Number 2 I mentioned is benzoic acid, the cracking of the joints, which is aggravated by the least motion. There is offensive urine in the background. Associated with that, we have high uric acid, and ganglion is important for benzoic acid. Number 3 on our list was polyphylum, where I mentioned the shifting character of the veins are very important for polyphylum, and special action of polyphylum is on the finger joints. 3 medicines for finger joint rheumatism, you can take it down. Number 1 is obviously polyphylum, finger joint rheumatism. Number 1 is polyphylum. V-I-O-L-A, viola odorata. Viola odorata. V-I-O-L-A, viola odorata. That's generally right-sided finger joints are involved. Right-sided. And when your well-selected medicine, both of them fails, you can think of ulmus. U-L-M-U-S. Ulmus. So in colophylum, you have the shifting character of the veins associated with lots of stiffness. Number 2 I mentioned viola, where right-sided is generally affected, and if your well-selected medicine fails, you can think of ulmus. Any questions on the book? I mentioned about actia picata. Another actia is very important is actia racemosa. A person working long hours on the computer, working for 6, 8 hours, 12 hours on the computer, or working actia racemosa. Working 6, 8 hours or 12 hours on a computer or writing for that aspect. If you could look here, pain in the neck and back. Pain in the neck region and this region. This is a special area for actia racemosa, neck region and back region. So, working long hours, using his hands for long hours. Where is it manifesting? It is manifesting in the neck and back. So, we are prescribing here on the basis of etiology and the location where it is at. Overexertion. Working so for such a long time, overexertion, manifesting where? In the neck and back, lots of soreness. Neck and back having lots of sore feeling in the neck and back. So person working for 12, 14 hours on the computer or writing for such a long hours, overexertion, and where is it manifesting? In the neck and back, associated with lots and lots of soreness.
Will it be in mother tincture as well?
No, that's importance. But you see 200. It can be in the belly of the muscles, it can be like that. It's more this. So we consider overexertion here. Overexertion manifesting soreness. You can think of actia racemosa. Also, arnica is obviously there. Lots of overexertion. Person playing after 10, 12 years, he didn't play. Suddenly started playing and was playing in the afternoon and in the evening he came down with lots of soreness in the body. Arnica. And for actia racemosa, overexerting himself, like it's mentioned in Allen's typewriter, or using the computer, resulting in soreness mainly in the neck and back. So overexertion manifesting soreness, two medicines are actia racemosa and arnica. Whereas overexertion manifesting in burning, lots of burning in the muscles. Overexertion resulting in burning in the muscles. Please remember Helonius. Helonias. Helonius. If you look in your body tape for Helonius, you open your body tape for Helonius. You find in the introduction, it's mentioned about second and third last line in introduction. Strained and tired muscles burn and heat. Strained and tired muscles burn and heat. Have you found out? In Helonius, in the introduction, about second and third last line in the introduction. Strained and tired muscles. For those worn out with hard work, tired, strained muscles burn and heat. But burning for Helonius is quite hard. Helonius is also a wonderful medicine. Please remember, for never been well since miscarriage. Never been well since miscarriage. Patient had a history of miscarriage or recurrent miscarriages, and patient has never been well since that miscarriage. Never been well since that miscarriage. How is it manifested generally? Backache after miscarriage is important for illness. Backache after miscarriage. Two aspects of illness I mentioned. Number one is overexertion, shopping for 8 hours, 10 hours. Lots of overexertion, manifesting in burning in the muscles. So overtired muscles, burning, that's illness. Number one. Overtired muscles, there is burning. That's illness. And number two is patient had a history of repeated miscarriages. Resulting mainly in backache. And one interesting thing about Delonius is patient is always happy when he is kept busy. Whenever he is not busy, you'll find that in Bodicate's mention. Whenever patient is kept busy, he is happy. And whenever he or she is not busy, he starts thinking about his problems. So kept happy when he is kept busy. Three things for Helonius. Number one, overtired muscles, burn after lots of exertion. Number two is patient has never been well since miscarriage. How is it manifested? Generally it is manifested as backache. And number three is patient is generally happy when he is kept busy. These three important aspects of illness. Associated with that, we have lots of weakness and prostration in illness. Lots of weakness and prostration. It's also mentioned in body tired back achy females. So tired females, lots of backache. Whenever they are going on a shopping, they are having those burning in the muscles, burning in different parts of the body. That's a illness. So I mentioned overexertion, manifesting soreness is arnica, actiaracimosa. Overexertion manifesting in burning, that's your Helonius. And overexertion manifesting in stiffness, rigidity, that's obviously Russell's. Overexertion manifesting in lots of stiffness in the muscles, rigidity in the muscles, that's Russell's. Now go on to the chronic medicines. If you look, it's in your page 25. So 6 medicines are mentioned: Banerjea, Posticum, Helica, Banerjea, Phytolacta, and Posticum. All of these, if you see, that all of these have very specific modalities on the basis of which we can prescribe these medicines. All of these are very specific modalities. Consider Banerjea, Rustox, Posticum, Phytolacta. Very specific modalities differentiates each from the other. In Banerjea, we know obviously patient is aggravated when he moves at all. Soon as he starts moving, there is lots of aggravation. Aggravation motion, better rest, and all joint pains for Banerjea are relieved by pressure. Aggravation motion, better rest, better by pressure. I'm just concentrating on the modalities. Aggravation motion, better by rest, better by pressure. Now you consider Rustox. You know, in Rustox we have aggravation first motion and better by continued motion. Aggravation first motion and relief by continued motion. We have aggravation rest in Rustox. We have rain aggravation, rain and damp aggravation in Rustox. Evening and night. and better by bond. When Rustox, aggravation first motion, better continued motion. Aggravation rest, aggravation rain and damp, aggravation evening, and better by bond. I remember Rustox R, 2R are very important aggravation for Rustox. R1 is rest and R2 is rain. If you remember these two aggravations for Rustox, R1 is rest and R2 is rain. R for Rustox and 2 R's give him very aggravation. Rest and rain. Rain and damp, rainy weather, damp weather, and rest aggravation. Third medicine we have is Phytolacca. In Phytolacca, we have some symptoms of rhinia, we have some symptoms of Rustox. There's a wonderful line in Allen's for Phytolacca that it occupies some symptoms of rhinia and some of Rustox, cures when these two fail. Covers some symptoms of rhinia, some symptoms of Rustox, and it cures when these two fail. So when you have some mixed modalities, some covering rhinia, some covering Rustox, you can think of Phytolacca. Most important in Phytolacca, rain and night. You know, in rhinia we have aggravation motion, in Rustox we have aggravation first motion, better by continued motion. In Phytolacca you can have either of these. You can have rhinia symptoms, you can have Rustox symptoms. Your Phytolacca patient may say that whenever I start moving, I have an aggravation. But by continuing moving, I also have an aggravation. You just can't get symptoms of rhinia, you're not getting also symptoms of Rustox. Am I clear? Yes. So you're not getting some symptoms of rhinia, not getting some symptoms of Rustox. In rhinia, we have better by rest, you have aggravation by rest in Rustox. In Phytolacca, you can have either of these. You can have the better by rest of rhinia, or you can have the aggravation by rest of Rustox. So, also in this aspect, it can be rhinia, it can be Rustox. Most important for Phytolacca is this rainy weather aggravation, this damp weather aggravation is very important, and you will definitely find this in Phytolacca. This rainy weather aggravation, this damp weather aggravation, you will definitely find that in Phytolacca. And also night aggravation. In Rustox, it's more evening tending towards midnight, whereas in Phytolacca, it's more towards the later part of the night. In Rustox, it's very finer differentiation. That in Rustox, it's more evening tending towards the first half of the night, whereas in Phytolacca, it's more towards the later part of the night. And in Phytolacca, also, please remember that it's one of the leading medicine for syphilitic osteoarthritis. I mentioned Kelly iod earlier, that is the medicine for syphilitic osteoarthritis. So in syphilitic myasm preponderant in osteoarthritis, we have Kelly iod, we have Phytolacca, and we have Calcarea food. Kelly iod, Phytolacca, and Calcarea food. Syphilitic myasm preponderant in osteoarthritis, Kelly iod, Phytolacca, and Calcarea food. How will the syphilitic be manifested? Syphilitic myasm, how will it manifest in osteoarthritis? Rain at night, yeah. Night aggravation is important, number one. Night aggravation. And number two is degenerative osteoarthritis, where you find there is degenerative changes in the bones, there is erosion in the bones. So degenerative changes, if you have associated with that night aggravation, please understand that it says syphilitic myasm is preponderant in the background. Degenerative changes where erosion is prominent in the joint spaces, or where you have night aggravation, the syphilitic myasm is preponderant in the background. So three medicines for syphilitic osteoarthritis: Calcarea fluid, Phytolacca, and Kelly iod. If you look in Kelly iod, if you just go back to Kelly iod, you see that I mentioned in Kelly iod there is sensitiveness, there is swelling. In Kelly iod, if you look, there is sensitiveness, there is swelling, and I mentioned night aggravation and damp aggravation. If you compare Kelly iod and Phytolacca, you see I mentioned night aggravation is also present in Phytolacca. This rain and damp is also present in Phytolacca. This night and damp is also present in Phytolacca, also present in Kalia. So how do you differentiate Phytolacca and Kalia? Please remember, for Phytolacca, migratory character of veins is very important. Shifting type of veins, migratory type of veins are very important for Phytolacca, which you will not find in Kalia. Shifting or migratory type of veins. That's a very important aspect for Phytolacca, which is not present in Kalia. And if you look, I mentioned sensitiveness for Kalia. Whereas in Phytolacca, because it is a mixture of rustox, it's a mixture of Banerjea, you can have better by pressure of Banerjea. Whereas in rustox, that sensitiveness is not so much important. Because Phytolacca is a mixture of Banerjea, mixture of rustox, you may have better by pressure. Whereas in Kalia, if you touch the joint, it's happening. So sensitive to touch in Kalia. Whereas in Phytolacca, the sensitive aspect is not important at all. Whereas on the other hand, in Phytolacca, you can have better by pressure. I'll just repeat again, in Phytolacca and Kalia, Phytolacca has damp aggravation, Phytolacca has night aggravation. Also Kalia has damp aggravation and night aggravation. But the differentiating point between Kalia and Phytolacca is, Phytolacca has that shifting character of the veins, migratory character of veins. Vein is sometimes here, sometimes goes to the ankle, sometimes comes to the hip joint. So always migrating from one joint to another in Phytolacca. In Kalia, there is lots of sensitiveness which you will not find in Phytolacca. In Kalia, there is lots of sensitiveness which you will not find in Phytolacca. As in Phytolacca, because it is a mixture of Banerjea, mixture of rustox, and you know in Banerjea we have lot the pains which are better by pressure, better by lying on the painful side. So in Phytolacca you can have better by pressure. The sensitiveness will not be there at all in Phytolacca. Any questions after this? So in Phytolacca you can have all these modalities and just you can add here migratory veins. At the start of our discussion I mentioned that give importance to the modalities, followed by location, followed by character. Location, if you consider, all three are right-sided veins. Banerjea is right-sided, mostly right-sided, rustox is mostly right-sided, Phytolacca is also mostly right-sided. So you cannot differentiate these medicines on the basis of location. So modalities I mentioned, and the character of the veins you can differentiate on the basis of that. How? Phytolacca will have the migratory character of the veins. Your rustox will have lots of stiffness and rigidity, which I mentioned in ginseng, if you remember, that there is lots of stiffness and contraction. Your rustox will have lots of stiffness and rigidity in rustox, and in Banerjea we have the characteristic stitching type of veins. All these modalities, we first generally ask about the modalities. Start with the modalities when we get a case of osteoarthritis. Is it aggravated by first motion? Is it better by continuing motion? I'm not getting that. Is it aggravated when you move as a whole? Then think of Banerjea. Or you're getting, I'm aggravated by first motion, but continuing motion doesn't relieve my trouble. It's also aggravated by continuing motion. And if you get with that, it's damp aggravation, it's night aggravation, migratory character of veins, it's definitely Phytolacca. So, some symptoms of Banerjea, some symptoms of rustox with migratory character of veins, please remember Phytolacca. And very final differentiation I mentioned, Phytolacca and Kalia, that sensitiveness will never be present in Phytolacca, and the migratory character of veins will never be present in Kalia. Another medicine I'd like to mention in relation to Banerjea, look in a body for Gettysburg water, G-E-T-T-Y, Gettysburg, G-E-T-T-Y. Water. If you look there, it's mentioned that there is rigidity which is aggravated from these motions. rigidity aggravated by least motion. And another line mentioning italics is not perceived when falling. Rigidity aggravated by least motion and it is not perceived when falling. So you have the modality of Brownian and the character of pain of Rostov's. You have the modality of Brownian and the character of pain of Rostov's. Rigidity is present in Rostov's, but the modality, that is aggravation motion, better rest, is of Brownian. If you have this type of symptoms, you can definitely think of this medicine. 30C, very good. There is rigidity of Rostov's and the modality, which is aggravation motion and better rest of Brownian. Small size, very specific action is Gettysburg. 30C, it works really well. Symptoms of Brownian with the character of pain of Rostov's. Now talking about Rostov's, I'd like to interrupt this. Is generally followed by calcium very well. Rostov's followed by calcium. If you remember this chain of medicine, it works really well. Rostov's, you start the case with Rostov's, then you can go to calcareous fluid, and then three medicines come up. Radium, puja, and medullary. You started the case with Rostov's, then you went to calcareous fluid, and last but not the least, an antipsychotic medicine can be radium, puja, or medullary. This chain of medicine is very important whenever you can start the case with Rostov's. Calcareous fluid is not mentioned in this list. I'd just like to mention three important things for calcareous fluid. Number one for calcareous fluid is aggravation first motion, better continued motion. Aggravation first motion, better continued motion. With aggravation new moon fluid. This is very important for calcareous fluid. Aggravation first motion, better continued motion. With new moon and full moon aggravation is very important for calcareous fluid. Number one. Number two is, I mentioned earlier, it's a medicine for syphilitic osteoarthritis. Calcareous fluid. Syphilitic osteoarthritis. Number three is calcareous fluid is a good medicine for calcaneal scar. Calcaneal scar. What happens in calcaneal scar? In our heel bone, there is an excess growth. In the calcaneum bone, there is an excess growth. And calcareous fluid generally covers this type of symptoms very well. Where in the heel bone, you will find like an excess bony growth from here. It's called exostosis. Excess bony growth in the calcaneal bone. And this type of excess growth with aggravation first motion, better continued motion. Please remember calcareous fluid is a wonderful medicine. Heel pain where there is an excess growth or exostosis, which is aggravated by first motion, which is relieved by continued motion, with new moon, full moon aggravation, and some symptoms of calcarea in general. You can think of calcareous fluid works really, really well.
Which publicity is salt
If there is an aggravation, you can come down to 12C. You can start with 13 to 100. If there is an aggravation, you can come down to 12C. So number one is aggravation first motion, better continued motion, with new moon, full moon aggravation. Number two is syphilitic osteoarthritis, I mentioned, Keria, Phytolacca, and calcareous fluid. And third in the list is calcaneal scar, which is also aggravated by first motion and reduced by continuous. It's an important aspect for calcareous. Other medicine on the list is Keli So look, I mentioned in Banerjea, aggravation motion, better rest, better by pressure. Just reverse these modalities and you get telecom. Just if you reverse these modalities, what? So patient is relieved by continued movement, better by motion, aggravated by rest, and aggravated by touch. I mentioned in Kelly IR that there is lots of sensitiveness. The sensitiveness is a common character of the Kellyans. Sensitiveness is a common character of the Kellyans which you find in Kelly Cup, you find in Kelly IR. Sensitiveness runs all through the family for Kellys. And this type of modalities, aggravation rest, better by motion, and aggravated by pressure, with sweat, backache, and lots of weakness. You'll have Kelly Cup. Sweat, backache, lots of weakness. That's the triangle for Kelly Cup. You'll have that. So aggravation by motion, aggravation by rest, better by motion, aggravation by pressure. With this triangle, lots of sweating, backache, and weakness is preponderant for Kelly Cup. Most often, Kelly Cup is generally prescribed for lumbago or back pain. It's a very wonderful medicine for back pain, which is relieved by motion. You will not find aggravation first motion like you found in Rastov's calcaria flow, but as a whole, patient in general is relieved by continued movement. Special affinity for Kelly Cup is the back. A wonderful medicine I'd like to mention for backache is cobaltum. Cobaltum. The metal cobaltum. If you look in your boric acid for cobaltum.
Sorry.
Look in your boric acid for cobaltum. Cobaltum. You find that backache is aggravation sitting, better by moving about. Backache, aggravation sitting, better by moving about. It's mentioned in the back. Pain in the back and sacrum, worse while sitting, better walking. So where is it prescribed? Someone driving for long hours. Driving for 6 hours, 7 hours on a stretch, not getting any break, resulting in severe backache. Obviously worse while sitting and better by moving about. And if that persists for a long time, please take up cobaltum. Especially in drivers, especially in persons who are driving for a long time, a long stretch without any break. Backache, which is worse while sitting and relieved by moving about. And generally 200, 1M potency works really well for cobaltum. Because it's the metal, high potency is generally well for cobaltum. Backache, worse while sitting, better by moving. Yes, the specific position is for long hours of Kelly Cup is better by warmer. Kelly Cup is generally chilly, so better by warmer. Kelly Cup is generally better by warmer. So again, see, Kelly Cup also has that backache. Cobaltum also has it. In Kelly Cup, it is relieved by motion. Also in cobaltum, it is better by walk. But how differentiate between Kelly Cup and cobaltum? Cobaltum has a specific position that long hours of driving, long hours sitting for a long time, resulting in that backache, which is better by. That's how you differentiate between Kelly Cup and cobaltum.